If not, we'd have anarchy all the time. But I'm just going back to that. I think we listen to the media and all this other noise, and we let this decide what we need to do. It's passing the blame and the buck on people's independent decisions that they're making.
Okay. So we really have to understand how beliefs
Mike
happen,
does a lot for me, right? For free. PTR 41. So freeloader is not what I would call him. He works very hard. He was actually an employee of mine at one time.
Right?
He's one of the hardest working people I've ever known. So your ad homs on him are completely incorrect.
I genuinely do not think that is the case. I think a belief is the result of you being convinced of something, right? And being convinced is something that happens to you. Like if I chose tomorrow, right? Don't get me. I think my life would be slightly easier as a religious person, right? I'd really love to believe that there's a God up in the sky who's looking out for me and shit. That would make me feel more comfortable and better in my daily life, right? But there is and has been no information presented to me so far that can convince me that is true. Right, and no matter how much I want to believe it, I know, right, that there is no information that is convincing enough to have me believe that, and so I completely disagree with the idea that people choose what they want to believe, and if we can recognize that, then we have to recognize that they formulate their beliefs based on the information that is presented to them, right?
But do you think that it absolves all agents? I feel like that type of logic could be used to excuse people oh, well, yeah, I hate gay people, but it's not my fault. I didn't choose to hate gay people. I was just born, that type of thing. I feel like technically true that obviously all of our, thoughts are the result of mechanical interactions that go on in our head and so on. I don't think that's a practical way to look at society, right? We have to...
Okay, so what you're saying is, I'm scared of the implications of what the truth is, so I'm going to pretend that the truth is something different to make life easier for me.
Well, it can be practical, right? You can't build a society off of that.
Okay.
Right? We believe false things all the time. We believe false things all the time if they have utility. I mean, NASA sends, spaceships to the moon based on Newtonian physics, which isn't technically, actually correct. But it's correct enough, and it's useful in helping making it easy because relativity is. No, I'm saying that relativity equations are extremely hard to use, and Newton's equations are good enough that we can get to the moon and back.
Okay, yeah,
right.
It's
so
correct
we can
enough
believe falsehoods all the time. It's just idealizations, right? I mean, we do this all the time.
It's correct enough that it gets.
I'm glad you're liking the stream, PTR.
They don't believe.
It's okay to have differences of opinion.
They don't believe that actually Newtonian physics
let's just keep it civil,
100% fucking rock solid. Okay, so this example's kind of silly.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, what's up?
What you're talking about is a really sort of basics philosophy 101 problem where you're talking about free will versus determinism, and if we live in a deterministic universe, what does that say about morality, right? How can you hold somebody accountable for their actions if all their actions are essentially predetermined, right? And that's something you have to wrestle with. But I think that what you said about being practical, right, is we can only be practical if we recognize the causes of the effects that we don't want, right? If we ignore that the huge amount of people in the United States right now who believe that the election was stolen and that a satanic cabal fucking controls the world. Okay?
Thanks for showing love. I appreciate you dropping in and doing that.
By the way. I'm not using some hyperbolic weird fucking example.
I hope you're having a good night.
If we view that as a problem, we can't ignore the cause, pretend the massive amounts of disinformation going out there, the influencers on Facebook, YouTube, Telegram, whatever, right, that they aren't having a significant effect on what this huge group of people believes. Because if we do that, we're never going to solve the fucking problem.
Yeah, sorry if it made it sound like I thought that, but no, yeah, I completely agree.
Cool. So, I don't really agree with, restrictions, government restrictions on free speech. I think that's what Mad Lab's arguing for, so maybe he can, tell us more about, what his proposal is. as a solution.
Or we having a pro streamer moment?
No. Can you not hear him? Jason, if you can't hear him, then leave and come back in. Okay, go ahead. Free speech.
Yeah, it sounded like you were advocating for like government restrictions, right? State restriction of free speech to address this problem.
I think that there needs to be. I mean, a law passed is a state restriction, so in a sense, yes. But I think that what would alone look like? Wouldn't. I don't think that alone would be enough. And maybe it's just using the current laws that we have and holding like bad people accountable. Like inciting a riot, inciting a mob is against the law. So maybe we just need to apply our laws more stringently instead of like letting things go because there's just too many people in power. Because like I can't. I mean, like the laws are there on the books, right? Like what additional law could I add? What could I add that wouldn't have just been like, oh, but he's the president, it's okay.
Well, I mean, that's my question, right?
I can't think of a law that would like maybe we need a militia or something. Like I don't know.
So if you're talking about like Trump's speech, right? Trump's speech before the insurrection. It wasn't just a speech. It
was a gathering of people, right? Like so he had the lies about the fact that the election was rigged. And he inflamed passions, et cetera, and they said, "All right, everybody, show up in D.C. on this day," and then gave that speech. So there's a lot of build-up, and there was. No,
I agree with you, and morally, I would hold him somewhat accountable. I think there's a lot of other people involved as well.
Right.
However,
like Roger Stone.
Your argument, your argument was that it passed the legal bar, right? That like, if we simply applied our laws more stringently, we would be able to. Like actually prosecute him for that, and I'm saying that I at least everything I've heard from like legal people on the subject, I think Legal Eagle did a video about it as well. Actually, right? It doesn't clear the bar for incitement. Like, you know.
I mean, I have to look at the Legal Eagle video. I missed it. I thought I caught all his takes on this, and I guess I just missed that one. It's actually upset. I mean, so like if it doesn't quite make it, then I guess the law would have to be like, I mean, there's just so much circumstantial evidence here. Like, so again, gathering the crowd, making a speech to that crowd, having individuals contacting 3%ers and various like semi-militia members and telling them, show up with your guns and your zip ties, that's sort of shit. Like that's a lot of, like that's that's like a big concerted effort to coerce the votes to change, right? Like, and the thing is, like, the riot wasn't as bad as it could have been. Like, if the electoral votes were burned, or someone, like, if Mike Pence was like strung up outside, whatever, then there would have been like severe consequences for that, right? Like, if the electoral votes actually got burned, like that alone, I think would have triggered a response of some kind, and I think it would have involved the legal system that we already have.
I agree. I'm just not sure, like 100.
Okay, but it does seem like you want the legal system as we have to punish Trump right now, right? So
I think it's critical for maintaining.
Right, but so like, what law should we add, right? Because clearly, as Fabian pointed out, the legal system doesn't currently consider that illegal.
I don't know if it's like a law that we need to add, or just like how a judge interprets laws that already exist. Like that's kind of where I'm kind of stumbling here.
I might just the Supreme Court to like overrule on the imminent and present danger or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
that might be right. I actually need to let me think about this. Actually, I want to give a good answer. So
I mean, if you want, we can go back to the hand advocacy test.
To my understanding, there are laws against incitement of violence, and Trump has done that since the beginning of his term, or since before he became a president.
It doesn't clear the bar. So what you need in the United States, because of the First Amendment, in order to claim somebody is like guilty of incitement to violence, is for them to say something along the lines of, let's go and commit this act of violence, right? Let's go and kill this person, or let's go and, right? Like you need to have it pretty much fucking spelt out like that, or it becomes really murky, very difficult to get somebody on incitement. And you can't use like random circumstantial evidence, like for example Trump talking about the mail-in ballots and stuff 5-6 months before the election. Like that has no effect.
Well, what about the time that he told people that they could go punch a guy out and he'd pay their legal bills? That's direct incitement of violence.
So that's really close, right? But you'd still have some real difficulty, right? Because if he said go punch that guy, right, that would be immediate incitement, right? But if he says if somebody punches that dude, I'll pay their legal bills, this is not the same. It
I mean, the standard is
murky and hard to prosecute.
The standard is like imminent lawless action. So Trump just saying that there's no imminent action that could result from that, right? He's talking generally. So
but the guy actually did go and punch somebody in the face. Like the guy actually did it. Like he did it. Like Manson indicated the same thing with the Tate murders, and he got convicted. Like, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, it's still an incitement of violence.
No,
Manson wasn't convicted of incitement to violence or whatever. The accusation was that he fucking planned the murders, right? That they were following a plan set out by Manson. I've got Helter Skelter on my bedside table, actually. I could probably look it all up. But, like, the Manson case was different and very dumb as well. And is back in the, was it 70s, 80s? Yeah.
1968, I think.
1968, yeah. Fuck me.
All I'm going to say on that...
I think that was actually before Brandenburg v. Ohio, because wasn't that in 69?
Sorry, Sonia?
No, I was going to say, I don't know, I'm just going to double down on, like, my beliefs, and it doesn't really, I guess, matter what my opinion is on, like, if I think it's legal or right or whatever. But if someone says, hey, go punch someone in the face, and that person goes punch them in the face, I don't think I should be held accountable for that. I think that person punching in the face should be held accountable for being an idiot and listening to me. Like,
ooh, I got one.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Matt.
So there's this thing that happens that's been happening in schools where, like, one person tells another person, kill yourself, and then they proceed to do it, right? Who should be held responsible? The person who...
Darwinism.
Nah.
Sorry, what did you say? Darwinism.
Nah, no.
That's a horrible case for personal accountability, man. I'm sorry. That's a bad hill to die on.
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
if it's Darwinism, you're talking about ultimate fucking determinism, in which the person had no choice because they were genetically inferior in some fashion. So, like, let's not use stupid fucking fashy arguments like social Darwinism.
Yeah, that might not be the right. All right. Well, anyway, moving on. God.
Correct, Veldrain. That's my point.
Yes,
once they make the call to action, it's different. Once they make the call to action, it's different.
Come on. All right.
Even more so when they say they're going to insulate somebody.
Going back to clear and present danger. So I'm looking at this quote from Holmes.
Right. That's the difference.
From, like, the early 1900s. Yeah. The question in every case is whether the words used are used in such circumstances and are of such nature as to create a clear and present danger that they will bring about the substantive evils that the United States Congress has a right to prevent. It's a question of proximity and degree. I think he's talking about war in this specific instance. This was related to anti-war activists during World War I, right? But, like...
Wait, well, I mean, we changed the standard since then, right? That was the hand advocacy test back then.
Yes.
So what we have now is under Brandenburg v. Ohio.
Right.
So there's more. The late 60s, because that case law is no longer relevant.
Fine, I could, but I mean,
Well,
Okay,
I mean,
But a lot of people have said there's issues with Brandenburg v. Ohio too.
Kind of eventually discarded because it had some stupid consequences, like that case where the anti-war protesters weren't allowed to distribute those leaflets, right? So, like,
right.
I mean, we don't want. I wouldn't recommend us going back to the hand advocacy test.
Okay, so I need. Okay, let me keep. All right, pretend. Let's go back in time like 3 minutes, and then just pretend I didn't say anything. I like frowned at Zomig for like a little bit, and then I kept my mouth shut while I kept reading.
Okay.
And then yeah, if we want
Happens to the best of us.
I'm not the best of us. It's fine.
Well, and I think this comes down to actually, somebody made the point earlier that this really comes down to who is enforcing the law or who is interpreting the law in the courts, right? So it could be said that Trump has done some things or said some things that would lead to imminent lawless action, like when he told those people, if you punch that guy in the face, I'll pay for the legal bills, and he did it. That would be imminent lawless action. That's imminent lawless action.
It has to be a call to imminent lawless action, not an action which results in imminent lawless action. It has to be an explicit call to that.
So basically, Trump would have had to point to the guy specifically and say, "If you punch him right now, I'll pay for your legal fees."
Yep.
So the fact
But just making a general broad claim does not count.
Yep.
But so there's these like loopholes and
that sucks. Okay.
Like for like free speech and stuff where you can like incite violence, kind of, but you cannot really, like not really be held accountable.
So I mean, this feels like a great place to tighten things up. I'm just saying, this seems like a great place to tighten things up, just a little bit.
The problem is when we tighten things up, those unintended consequences come back, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Then we start cases where we wouldn't want to consider it incitement to violence. Then
I wouldn't want hate speech laws. I'm just saying that.
So let's say a broad call
if you choose to tell somebody
like that
to go kill somebody, or you tell somebody that you're going to pay their legal fees
so then
if you go punch somebody. You're inciting that violence. You're encouraging the violence. You're giving them the out. You're insulating.
I'm having a really hard time.
It's hard to predict. It's hard to predict.
You're essentially facilitating the violence at that point. Because you're saying you're not going to get in trouble if this happens.
You could then start getting people on stuff like, "Oh, I don't know
especially
how Trump hasn't been assassinated
the bully
yet,"
pulpit,
or something like that, right? I know a lot of people who said very similar shit, right? Yeah, eat the rich, maybe, right?
Ooh.
I don't like government restriction on freedom of speech because it will be used to fuck over leftists.
Yeah, but like. Okay, true, but like also, if there's nothing, then like this behavior continues. Like something needs to be done about, like.
Yeah, you're right. People need to actually take some fucking action. That's the problem with America. That's the problem with American politics and the way people are fucking so disconnected from the political process is that they don't recognize that they have the power to be able to like try and change these things because they do.
But
I mean, that's a fair point.
Not everybody, because not everybody, like going back to like the original topic, right? Because not everybody fully participates in every step of like participating in a democracy. Like, is it really like the best option? Like, isn't there possibly something like it's a different system? Like
what? You have two options.
About, like decentralizing like democracy, like
federalism, like. Kind of have that to an extent.
I don't know.
I mean, if you want to further federalize, like I'm on board, but I don't think you would be.
No, not me.
It depends on what you mean by federalism, right? Like I think splitting nations up into smaller cooperative democracies is like cooperative and overlapping. That's the important thing, so that like individual areas aren't recognized as separate. Getting rid of borderlines, all that sort of shit. You're never gonna fucking do that right now, right? This is like utopian pipe dream that like you just have to move towards and address problems as they arise. Sorry.
I do want to. Oh, hello, Weeb. I'll let you go first.
I just wanted to ask, what the person Zombie 12. What do you think about doxing? Is it the person's who causes that action, or is the person who's asking to be doxxed? Who should have the responsibility there?
What do you mean? Can you break it down? Like, give me an example, because I'm an idiot.
Okay, so like, if I say, I hope somebody goes and kills your wife in a video game, but someone actually goes and does it, who should be responsible?
The person that did the act.
Okay, so
what if he pays the person who did the act?
Well, obviously the guy that pays him.
Okay.
Well, both.
No payment. No payment.
Okay.
Oh, if you just say something, I don't know. I mean, it might not. I mean, yeah, I just agree. The person that does the act should be held accountable.
Shouldn't they
Legally, morally, they should definitely be held accountable.
Well, yeah, exactly. But the problem with morals is we all have different morals, right? And that's what we have a government for, to try to make laws. But it's not going to make everyone's morals, agree. So you can't judge people by different moral standards.
Aren't laws just morals codified?
That's all they are.
Yeah,
we judge people by our own morals all the time.
We have different morals, and that's okay.
Don't you dare legislate morality.
No, it's not okay. Okay, it's genuinely not okay because.
Well, no, it's okay as long as they follow our morals.
Well,
yeah,
hey, I'm all about no victim, no crime. Like, you can have you agree about whatever you do, but you don't bother me.
Okay, but differing morals cause victims. If I think that it's perfectly moral and just for me to come over and punch you in the fucking face, right? And
you can think that until you do it. And once you do it, you violated my right.
I violated what right?
But like my morals
I don't believe you have rights. That's my moral system, okay? My moral system is that you don't have any rights. You don't have a right
until you act on it, then you can believe what you want. And once you act on it, then it is what it is, and then victors go to the spoils.
Okay, but people act on I'm sorry.
I don't think you're disagreeing.
I think we agree.
So you're saying that the person that does the act is responsible, but like for a case, for like an instance like Osama bin Laden orchestrated 9/11, he didn't personally crash into the Twin Towers of the Pentagon, but he's still responsible. So there's instances where you absolutely have to just draw the line, and it doesn't have to be such an extreme like 9/11.
Yeah, true. But that was an actively planning in it. Yeah.
So a better example would be if I had $1 million and I just start handing money to people to tell you to go kill someone. I'm causing these people to do an action. I'm not planning. Hey, I didn't do anything. I just gave you the money. Go kill the person. I didn't plan it. But I'm inciting someone else to do something that causes another person's death. I'm not the reason that we can put our morals on that person is because without that person handing out that money, telling people to do things, that action wouldn't have happened. We can put our morals on that person.
It's scaling, right? The thing is, what is enough incentive to drive someone to kill, right? So, it could be money for some, but it could be words for others. It could be something else for someone else. And the point is that, if you give anyone the right combination of incentives, they can be turned into a killer. Yeah. And so, if you're providing... Well, okay. Whatever.
No, I mean, if someone is abnormally, if they become a killer after you, I don't know, maybe they've got a tick, and if you clap your hands 3 times, they kill you, just because it happened to set them off, right? I mean, sure, you could say that you caused it, but you're not held responsible for that.
Sure, but we can have reasonable expectations. If
I agree.
Hold on.
No, I agree. I think
that's true.
What a reasonable person would expect is the
intent is actually.
At what Mad Lad was saying,
criminal intent is actually a thing, right? When criminal cases happen, we look at the intent and try to determine whether they intentionally did something or whether they didn't. So, if someone accidentally clapped and someone decides to do something insane, then yes, that they might have done it on purpose or not. And we're going to determine that through a legal thing or whatever. But the point is, the incentive that it is required for someone to do something really scuffed is quite varying, and there are large masses of people that will just use will take words, a powerful politician's words, after they've been exposed to propaganda for a decade. That was enough. Mm-hmm. That's my point.
That was enough for January 6th to happen, right? There was enough propaganda that that made people believe that their nation's democracy was being subverted, that, for a significant amount of them, that they were under some kind of at risk of some kind of like authoritarian communist takeover. You know, it's fucking bizarre what you can get people to believe by just blanketing the airwaves with bullshit. And
right.
like,
and I mean, it's even before that, like just like any time where there's like lots of paranoia, like during the French Revolution, when I think I was talking about this the other night, where like peasants were afraid.
We can hear you typing. Just go ahead, Matt.
So like during the French Revolution, there would be like these moments where like, you know, peasants were like roaming the countryside, right? They're roaming the countryside because they were looking for foreign armies that were invading France. And then the village next door would be like, oh, it's a foreign army, when it was really just like French peasants looking for foreign armies, like scouting parties, that type of thing. And so like there's like this great wave of fear and paranoia in France that just spontaneously happened because everybody was paranoid, and burning down like, you know, all the debts and stuff too that was happening too. So I mean, it could be like anything, literally, like, and like throughout history, there's just been periods of groups of people acting in mass in like really, really crazy, dumb ways.
Yeah.
But
so
those masses too, they were driven by propaganda. I forget the writer's name, but like that period you're talking about, like there's a painter that was like killed in his bathtub by a woman.
So
that man was like driving huge propaganda, like just
in
like,
Paris specifically, though. So most of his stuff was in Paris. Yeah. And even though he and like his writings were not reaching the countryside, like I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I don't know if you can say his writings weren't reaching the countryside. Like people would still come to Paris and then like go onto these parties or like go back to their village because Paris is unsafe, right? And they take with them. I mean, Paris had just recently undergone like a huge like restructure, so people were already wanting to leave Paris to begin with because their entire like society had just been like driven.
Well, the nobles were fleeing Paris. A lot of other, like most of the regular folk were excited by what
should have been fleeing Paris.
But like you still had family in the countryside or whatever that you could return to, and they like
okay. I don't want to go too far in this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can.
Sorry. No problem. Yeah. So I guess I think we've kind of hit this one pretty hard, and I'm gonna try maybe something else. So, social media and these bans that have been happening, right? They've been laid mostly at the feet of, well, no, actually, I didn't want to say mostly, but conservatives have suffered a lot of them. Now, I'm not trying to like figure out like whether these companies should be able to do that, but should they be allowed to make permanent bans? If someone, we can consider all kinds of violations that, like, I think we could probably all agree, like, should give someone a permanent ban, right? Like, to the greatest extreme, let's say, right, like child porn or something, you put that up on Twitter, I think you should, like, never ever go back, right? But when it's like disinformation or inciting violence or something like that, should you be able to eventually appeal that and get back on? I'm sorry. Should there be forgiveness for these types of things, especially for like massive repeat offenders, not just for like one person who like, you know, puts some like, I don't know, like anti-mask meme or something, right? But like someone who's a repeat offender, even especially if they are influential, I think maybe they should have any additional responsibilities if that's the case. But what do y'all think?
I have an outright.
If the federal government is a proponent of free speech, these corporations and these organizations also have free speech. They also have the ability to set the rules by which they want people to engage. And as such, if they feel like that the speech that's happening on their platform does not speak to their values or does not speak to what they want to purvey in the public space, they have every right to permanently ban somebody without reprisal and without repercussion.
I hate the idea of... No, okay, hold on. So
it's not that simple.
Okay, well, it's not that simple.
Okay, hold on.
Legally, morally, it's really complex.
Okay, well,
I hate the idea of a corporation owning giant chunk of media being able to just outright ban people from existing, right? Like just saying, oh, no, your voice doesn't count.
You're not banned from existing. You're not banned from existing. Go do it somewhere else.
Let me just finish.
No.
Well, like there's such a thing as a monopoly, right? Like just a death grip on social media. Like there's no competitor of Facebook. There's no competitor.
There's not?
Not really? Like what? Okay.
Okay,
what
so I've got a question for you.
Is like Facebook.
Let's say
We're on a
15 years
competitor
ago,
of
what was
Facebook
the
right
world's-
now.
Yeah,
This is a
15
competitor of
years ago-
Facebook?
Hold up.
This is.
15 years ago, what was the world's biggest social media site?
MySpace.
Right,
gone.
and at the time, that was considered a monopoly that needed all this trust busting.
By
stuff.
and large,
The
I think
point
Viv is based as hell.
MySpace got
These
trust
things-
busted? I thought they just got
Sometimes I
outcompeted by
think she
Facebook.
has some takes I don't
There
agree
were
with,
articles
but by
calling
and
for
large,
it.
I
They
think
did
she's
get
based as hell.
outcompeted. They
Okay,
didn't
well,
actually
whatever.
get
It didn't happen. There was no
Or
legal
they.
anything that happened.
I
It
can't
was
remember
MySpace
which
and
pronouns they
Facebook
prefer.
both came about at the same time.
Right, but my point
One
is,
consumed
these
the other.
arguments were used back then as well.
Okay, but they were used back then when there was lots of social media, so it didn't matter. Now there's like just pillars of social media that exist. But regardless, that's not my point. Let me finish my point real quick, and then we can start like tearing me apart because I deserve to be teared apart for my take here. Okay, I don't like the idea of companies being able to just decide who gets to have a voice and who doesn't. Profit motive is not the greatest thing. That being said, I can't express how relieved I was when Donald Trump was removed from Twitter, right? Like, I was very, very glad that that happened. And I know it's hypocritical for me to say that because I don't like the fact that we've got a big organization that's generating wealth deciding who gets to speak and who doesn't. And I'm not really sure what alternative we even had here. I hate the fact that I'm relying on this.
So I agree to a certain extent. I personally would prefer that most people don't get banned. Obviously, there's exceptions like the child porn stuff that you guys mentioned earlier. But the way to do that, we have to change the public opinion because ultimately these companies like Facebook are the reason they're banning people is because they're getting calls from their users to ban these people, right? They don't actually care. They're in it for the money. So if you really want, Facebook to stop banning people and stuff, which I agree with, I think we definitely should, encourage people to, be a little bit more thick-skinned if it's not actually like super harmful stuff. I think we have to encourage that like individually, and we have to try to make a change in society that like people are more accepting of alternative viewpoints because the companies are just a reflection of, they're a reflection of us.
Right. But I mean, like the next step though, like if it's a profit motive, right? Like the next step would be like, Jeff Bezos saying, here's like $1 million. I don't want to hear anything about eBay. I think eBay should no longer exist. So anytime someone references eBay on your website, you should just delete that.
I think sometimes
post,
it's
right?
a little exhausting for him.
It's a
You can
bad
see it on
example
his
because
face.
eBay doesn't matter.
He's
for
like,
a lot of
Jesus,
people, but like
come
you get
on.
my point. Like you can start seeing how profit
But it's like you
motive
said, he never
can
missed a day of
impact,
work. So,
like just
he does
Right.
it because he loves the overall.
So the profit motive here is to adhere to what its users want, right? Its users don't like. So if you basically the old saying
Agreed,
is
Veldrain.
like, oh, well,
that's
if you
exactly
welcome
what you
both
do.
sheeps and
Or you create a
wolves,
company that can
then
counter
you'll
that company
find
that
out
does what they're
you'll
not
be left
doing.
with only wolves, right?
It's
or
not
something like
They
just
that.
had
about-
Parler.
it's not just
They
about
had
users,
Reddit,
it's
or
about
not Reddit. They had
advertisers,
8chan.
Yeah,
They had
true. It's about
4chan.
advertisers and shit as well. But advertisers, they're susceptible for the same reason, right? They don't want to be associated with this content because the users and stuff will complain and stuff.
But
right?
what advertisers get promoted by Facebook, right?
I don't know. I haven't been on Facebook in fucking years.
Well, you have to pay for it. Is the point? Like those who have money can push their product on Facebook, and those who don't have money can't push their product on Facebook. There's no delineation.
Well, right, but again, the advertisers don't want to advertise on something controversial because they'll get pushback, right?
I mean, it's not
So
controversial. My point is that
still,
the system is
my point is that
controversial.
the restrictions from Facebook ultimately do come down to people's
Agreed, Sen. They
wanting
get banned because they're doing hateful
people
shit.
wanting those people to get taken down.
But it
Well,
does
right.
affect
And
the
what I'm saying
company's
here,
bottom line
this is,
because it
I'm
makes them
talking
look
about
bad,
something
right? Like,
sort of completely different, but not really. So, like, I'm not talking about restrictions. I'm talking about like what's actively being pushed, right? So, like, Facebook has a profit motive to push ads where people pay for it. So, like, on Facebook right now, the way it works, the more money you spend, the more users you're allowed to reach. So, if I blow $25, I'll reach like 3,000 people. But if I blow $100, I can reach a proportionally larger portion of population, and I can tailor it to specific zip codes and whatever else. So,
yeah,
like,
that's literally how advertising works.
right. And like in a sense, this is like this. It's we live in a capitalist society, so people should pay to get their ads out. Whatever, fine, sure. But this makes it very hard for local businesses to compete in a sense. Like, you have to have the money, the upfront money, to be able to start competing economically. And so, like, I guess my problem here is that profit motive almost kind of suppresses opportunity for those who don't have the wealth to get their stuff going. Does that make sense? Sort of. As a continuation of that.
But I don't really see what this has to do about free speech, though. Like, I don't see what the profit motive in regards to free speech is. Like, if you want to talk about, like, advertising and, having more capital obviously affects that more, but I don't think that aspect of the profit motive is relevant to the free speech type banning situation.
Yeah, and my whole thing on this is we can talk about, it's harmful to ban somebody from social media. No, it's not. You can go set up a website tomorrow. You can go set up your own website. You can generate your own content, and you can plug it. Like, you don't need that.
Jason, I agree with you, right? It's their right, but we can't act like there's no negative effect, right? The creation of echo chambers, making it so that, these people don't no longer have a voice. Like, there are serious downsides. It's just that, the company's rights trump those downsides.
I mean, you saw what happened to Parler, though, right? Like, Parler got destroyed. Like, literally, the host, I think it was GoDaddy was hosting Parler, and they just said, nah, we're not going to host you anymore. Goodbye. And, it literally, even the alternative sites got canceled. And that just canceled. Like, their databases got forcefully downloaded by, millions of users because they didn't know how to secure anything. So all these texts that were supposed to be completely anonymous got spread through the web, and people got arrested as a result.
This is down?
People
I thought they
speaking.
just got a new host.
Did they finally?
I was gonna say a lot of these,
I don't know for sure.
The Daily Caller is a hosted website, right? There are a lot of white nationalist websites that are hosted by web services companies. Okay, they're not hosted by AWS, they're not hosted by GoDaddy, but there are web services companies that will host these sites. So to say they don't have a platform.
I don't have enough information to say
I don't have
how much
platform. Like, the difference between Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, these really huge fucking social media sites, YouTube, and backwater bullshit sites that nobody fucking visits, right, is massive. It's fucking huge, right? And the problem that I have with this entire fucking situation, obviously, is that we're talking about a resource, essentially, right? The ability to have your voice heard in the public square, that is privately owned by companies who have pretty fucking hefty control over what can be done and said and who is allowed access to this particular fucking resource. The only answer to this problem is to take these companies into public ownership, honestly, and decide how to use them democratically. But we're not going to be able to do that.
We'd be back in the same. No. We'd be back in the same exact problem if we had to decide this democratically. Like, if you ask most people, they would just vote, yeah, we can deplatform these people, right?
Yeah, that's great. Good.
That's the same thing.
No, we just got done talking about
it's not the same fucking thing. It's not the same thing as a private corporation, private institution getting to decide what is done without any kind of fucking democratic input. I'm sorry, I thought from the last conversation,
input. Their user base. That is the democratic input.
That is okay. That
people
is not
will use a platform they don't like. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, no, but there's a limit, right? Like, for example, going to I'm going to use Blizzard as an example. Like, for 5 years at least, everybody ever talked to playing World of Warcraft complained about how shit the game was, and yet they still paid and subbed and did all the things on World of Warcraft because they had a routine as a part of their routine.
Because they had a monopoly over the market, just like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc.
World of Warcraft have a monopoly over the market? Just because they were the #1 game out there doesn't make them a monopoly. They weren't stopping other games from being made. They were a monopoly because people enjoyed that game over other games.
Well, enjoy is a strong word for it if you're complaining about it.
Okay, fine. But
so like we said earlier, right? Somebody asserted very fucking stupidly that America's democracy is the best democracy in the world. Now let's say
that's rich.
Let's say
wait, no, that someone was Zomig. Just remember.
I don't know who the fuck it was. It was just
Zomic. How do you forget?
look. I'm not out to attack particular people. Okay, it's just if I hear something dumb, I'll call it dumb. Okay, but anyway, point being, right? Let's say that person was correct in their assessment, and America's democracy was the best democracy in the world. Right? We would still all agree that it needs some substantial fucking changes. Now, if you're living in a world where you're like, yeah, democracy is good and I want to live in the best democracy, your choice is obviously America, right? And if you have no significant way to change that, right, what are you going to do? Are you going to leave it for a worse one, right? No, you should have a voice. You should be able to change what happens in that democracy, just like you should be able to change what happens on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or whatever, right? You should have a democratic say. And the fact
I don't think those are analogous.
The fact that you remain there, this is the important point, right? The fact that you remain there does not mean that everything's fucking hunky-dory and okay. Okay? It's quite the opposite, in fact. It just means that this is the best available option for what you want.
Right, but I mean, you don't have, like, you have a right to, you know, I guess a sort of self-government, right? You don't have a right to other people's property, which is what, like, Facebook is.
Okay, but, like...
Well, the point is that if it was publicly owned, it'd be more, like, good, right? Like,
what do you
Facebook?
All of these problems. Okay, so all the problems that Facebook has now with this deplatforming and stuff would be the same, because you know why Facebook deplatform stuff? Because that's what the majority of its user base wants it to do.
Good.
Well,
Okay, well then you like it.
No, well,
it's the same.
It only
but it's not the same though.
It only exclusively does that on like a local.
It would actually be even better, right? Because we wouldn't just have random fucking idiots who said the N-word being deplatformed. Richard Spencer's account would be fucking gone, right? Nick Fuentes' account would have gone way fucking earlier. Same for David Duke. Same for all these neo-Nazi fuckheads who've been sitting around on social media for decades, right? Sorry, not decades, but you know what I mean. For fucking years, right? Without being fucking purged, like the disgusting Nazi scum that they are, right?
Right, and I can... Sure, but don't you think that the American public would also do the same thing to people who obviously not as bad? I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm just going to head that out there. I'm not calling communists and Nazi the same. Nazis are way worse. Yada yada yada. Disclaimer. But don't you think the American public would also vote to deplatform people like communists and stuff too? Like the majority would support that sort of deplatforming.
Yeah, based on the platform you're on, if you go to Facebook.
If we've abolished private ownership of resources, we're living in a fucking communist society, so no.
Okay, well, that's a good point. What?
No, because if Facebook is owned
I'm here for it.
this way, that's literally communism.
Facebook, a singular company, is owned publicly, then we're under communism?
No, that's not even how.
No. but that's
because one aspect matches.
I'm not saying like the whole country. I mean, what I'm saying is like
okay, sure.
What the suggestion is that the people within the country would be in agreement with it because, hey, we're in favor of public ownership.
Not the country.
I'm sorry.
I misinterpreted when you said that public ownership of Facebook. I assumed you meant just Facebook and not all of.
Okay. I said at the start I don't agree with the. So I said at the start that I don't agree with the private ownership of like resources, basically, right? These things ought to be communally owned. Now, even if that wasn't the case, though, do you think in any fucking realistic scenario?
I always wonder what these guys are saying when they're talking to their audiences. I know what I say to you guys. It doesn't much.
Yeah, I do actually.
It's more meta conversation.
It doesn't even matter.
No, there's a lot of pressure right now to classify Facebook and other stuff as a public utility. Yes, I do think that it could be publicly owned before fucking red stores.
Wait, can we chill for a second? Because like this is like a very clear point. Like if we have a Facebook co-op, right? Because that's what it would be. Like, and who on the Facebook? Like, if everybody's participating in the Facebook co-op, why would they vote to remove communists from the platform? They're literally a member of a cooperative.
Okay, yes, in a communist society, they're not going to vote.
I'm sorry. Are we saying cooperative or federally owned? I guess I'm getting this is very loose.
So communism could be a lot.
Sure. When we say publicly owned, not everyone means co-op. So we're not all on the same board when you just start saying, "Oh, co-op." Therefore, why would we vote away our
I
peace?
guess I was using a cooperative.
It could be an
as,
ESOP.
like,
it could be an ESOP too. So whatever.
Okay, well, I mean,
so if we take it
just-
back to
this is
what
an
I was
example.
saying originally, it was just like I don't like having fucking state power over freedom of speech. What do you think, mate? Do you think that I'm going to say it should be collectively owned and therefore federally controlled? Or do you think it's going to be like a cooperative?
Well,
I mean,
exactly. It's true.
Right, so just follow the
Then
fucking thread
maybe-
of the
maybe-
conversation.
listen, I don't know you. Okay, so maybe you should just say it real quick because I
Okay,
understand.
so
My bad.
so
No,
yeah,
no,
so-
no, you don't need to know me to like hear the things that I say during a conversation. And
if you
interpret.
specified co-op, then I would agree with that. Yeah,
I don't know if Django was
it's not that
here
hard.
earlier.
I also
Well,
wasn't
I
here.
don't. All right, whatever.
my apologies. I interpreted you were talking about America now. If we all voted on who to displatform, communists would be included. That was my point.
Okay,
Okay,
sure, but
sure.
like
Yeah, some
Facebook.
communists would.
And
Some
that's-
communists should be. Some
The-
communists should be fucking deplatformed.
Why?
Why? People like fucking Caleb Morpin can go actually suck a fuck, mate. Genocidal
True.
nutbags. Okay? So yeah, there are fucking insane communist authoritarians out there who are fucking like just as bad as Nazis.
Get
Okay,
rid of anyone who
okay,
defends
sure.
the Uyghur genocide.
Okay, sure. But now let's.
Opinion.
I would. Unfortunately, it's the case that America also has an extremely negative view of not even just the authoritarian communists, right? Like, take a look at how they view Antifa, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
don't you think that those types of people would also get deplatformed?
Well,
under
no,
this?
because
If we
anybody
have to
who
vote
is,
right now?
if anybody
Good
is
luck, you're way
voting,
too smart.
if-
No, I'm not. I don't want to. I don't like deplatforming people, even
But
even
if
dirty
you're-
commies.
I don't understand because, like, look, if you are in a democratically owned company or cooperative or anything, it's a democratically run system. Why would you vote to remove the people who agree with the system existing in the first place? Like, you're literally saying, "Oh, I don't like having this option. I'm going to get rid of the people that support this."
True.
So
Like,
Facebook
it's-
left unity.
If Facebook was owned publicly in a cooperative sense, there's no way that they would be like, "Oh, we don't like socialists. We don't like communists."
Wait. If Facebook was owned by the workers of Facebook collectively, and they were like a co-op, union co-op, they
Yeah.
are all they
would.
they're
I mean,
not they love
socialists.
communists now. They're socialists now.
I mean, it's
They're
a
just people with jobs.
I have a
but it-
question actually about this.
You can have
when we
jobs
say
and still
it's-
like.
I know that you can be jobs and be but you just because you work at a place doesn't mean you.
I mean, I guess like inherently, not necessarily, but like also inherently, you
Literally
are
anywhere
actually,
that I've ever worked,
you are-
I
but
do
you're-
give a fuck
but-
about their
have you worked
ideology
well, right, but
because
if
I'm a
you-
real person.
Yeah,
But
I
if
work for
you
PayPal.
are-
I can't stand Peter Thiel or Elon Musk. So
Okay, fine, but if you're working
True.
for a cooperative,
Okay, hold up.
You-
So when you guys say Facebook publicly owned, you don't mean by its users. You mean by who do you mean by? Because I thought the whole point was democratizing the people who use the platform, not who like own
No,
it. Like,
by
if there's
society
a
as a
billion,
whole.
right? But there's like a billion people on it, right? So
Sure.
And so we're assuming it's not society today. We're assuming it's a society that would have agreed with this change. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
not
who
interested. In
cares?
that. I'm not interested in this. This is
It's
not.
just
This is
some-
not our reality. Like,
Okay,
oh yeah, let's
yeah,
put
and
ourselves in an
that's
alternate
okay.
reality and answer that question. Who gives a fuck?
Okay, and that's precisely what I fucking said, you moron.
Then
So
why would you
what
even go into all of this?
Okay, no, you went down the fucking rabbit hole. What I initially said was, right, I would prefer that these things are publicly owned. We can democratically decide how we use them, right? Because I think that the individual corporations having control over like who gets to say what and where and when and why is fucking dumb. Okay, I would much rather have that be like democratically controlled, but that isn't the world we live in, and so we have to like get those institutions, right, that do exist currently to work for us in whatever way we can. So we use people power to try and pressure them to remove the scumbags off the fucking platform. And that was my argument against a state intervention, state control over these things, saying that the state should come in and legislate against what you can and cannot say on Facebook. No, we should use people power to get these companies to deplatform people.
I think that's what we currently do, though. Like, isn't that what we're currently doing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
what would
good.
you
and we need
change
to
that?
encourage more people to do that. We need to big up cancel culture, and we need to direct it not at fucking some rando Trumper who happens to say the N-word, right? But on the people that actually fucking matter, on the people who are using these platforms like in a concerted effort to spread fascist ideology, to incite violence and hatred.
Do you think that we should handle cancel culture more responsibly then?
Yes.
I agree with that. I don't think nearly as many people should be canceled as are canceled. There's a lot of people that get canceled for no fucking reason.
Yeah, and a lot of people like me who deserve to be canceled have never been canceled. Like, where's the justice in the...
That's it. You're canceled, Pan. We're canceling you right now. It's
do
over.
it right now.
The zoning? Did you have something to say previously? Or...
No, I don't know. I think it's a tough one. I was thinking about this with the social media stuff because I do think private companies at the end of the day should have the right to make the decisions they want. So I think it's a tough one, but maybe it's something where, you know, I look at it like the free speech. Like if I'm on a street corner, I can say whatever I want, right? And now we've just moved into a technology age. It's like just, you know, it's changed, but I feel like the laws haven't really caught up with it. So I don't know if it's something where there needs to be like a free speech internet. That sounds kind of weird.
Should
but
you
like,
be able to go into someone else's building and shout things? Or should security be able to...
No, I totally agree that private companies can shut people down. What I'm saying is, like, I don't know if there's something that needs to be like an internet government, maybe not control, because that sounds, it has a negative connotation to it.
Oh, you
but
want to make
basically
the
like
internet
a free
public utility
speech platform out there. The internet basically shouldn't be able to be monopolized and controlled. It's like the roads and streets.
So you want the internet to be a public utility?
Yes.
Well, it's basically...
Oh, right on. I agree with you. The internet should be a public utility.
All right.
I hate this issue.
But no, I think, but like, again, and then people, like, companies could, you know, capitalize on that like they probably do right now on certain things. But yeah. But hey, Prime, it's 2 a.m. here. I gotta hit the sack. But hey, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. Everyone, pleasure meeting y'all. Mad Lad, thank you, my man.
Hopefully it wasn't too bad. Trust,
yeah.
they get used to us, rightoids. They get used to us.
You know, it's all good. I love it, man. I love it.
We love to have you in the future. Thank you for
definitely appreciate you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. I'll never get used to you, rightoids.
I was just telling him that.
Sorry, guys. My dad is coming and bringing me artwork.
I've spent far too much time and energy having reasonable conversations with rightoids who never learn, never change. I don't have any fucking interest in doing so.
Well, from our perspective, you're the one who doesn't change despite the...
You did a good job.
Yeah, which I can't even.
So it's not just 2 a.m. for Zomig, it's also 2 a.m. for me, and I should probably dip. But
be a fucking cringe bitch and leave them.
I'm sure. Look, I
do it.
I gotta get stuff done. But Viv, it was good to see you again. Like I'm really pumped. I'm excited to be back. So and everyone else, of course, it was good to see you guys as well. I'll see you on the flippy.
Audio.
I got it. Bye.
Wait, hold on. Let me try this again.
Got
people being
picked
up on that one.
Yeah. All right. Have a good one. Yeah. All right. So I'm not sure how well we've really been able to answer this question as to whether these bans should be permanent.
I don't think so. I mean, generally, yeah. I mean, look, if we let people out of jail for murder, I feel like we should probably let people out of, Twitter prison for bad stuff, eventually, right? I mean, if we truly believe in like rehabilitative justice, right? Like we shouldn't keep their access to the platform.
This isn't a court of law. I don't give a shit what they do.
I know it's not a court
company.
of law, but
It's
we're talking morally. We're talking morally here.
Well,
like, in order to engage with Prime's question, we have to like engage with that. Because I agree with you, Jason, that ultimately it's up to the company. But in order to engage with his question, which I think he wants us to do, we have to like talk about it morally, not just legally.
How do you determine whether somebody's rehabilitated?
Well, I mean, you can't really.
Okay, so
regardless, we do the same thing that we do in regular prisons, right? Like, you're banned X amount of years.
Okay, but regular prison's shit too, right? So we're
Okay,
not,
sure,
we're not
but,
saying we should structure Facebook bans like the American prison system, surely.
Obviously not, but I will
Okay,
say,
cool.
I will say though, like obviously the solution to the U.S. prison system isn't to make everything life in prison, right? So that like that would be the equivalent.
Okay, so like just I'm going back to the original, right? Like punishment, like as a form of like remedial, like whatever, like doesn't work. Like people don't respond to like negative reinforcement. So for like permanently banning somebody, temporarily banning somebody, it doesn't matter. Like you've interrupted their like revenue streams, their interactions, and you could just like either let them reset endlessly and just like avoid bans, or just like let it be part of the terms of service agreement. Like you still hinder like how their message gets out, because eventually people just get tired and it's like stop trying to pursue like staying connected to this person that they're not attached to like in like in IRL. So I think it's you might as well as just not have any kind of permanent ban, because at least then
thanks, Mike. I'm pretty impressed too, man.
Like,
she just really started developing over the past year or so, like getting really into her art.
Still a part of a society that is willing to.
I'm stoked, man.
Like,
I love the work she does.
We allow them to like reintegrate if they're.
They shouldn't be a part of society until they can behave. If they can behave in such a manner as they are.
Right, but we won't know if they can behave unless we let them back in.
You have to let them know that
I don't care.
Going to willing to let them in if they're going to reform. If it's just
okay, but why are we focused so much on like reforming these fucking assholes that are doing damage to other people?
Because that was the question.
Because negative reinforcement doesn't work. Like
okay, no. Okay, negative reinforcement doesn't work. Fine, I'm cool with that, right? But like, what is the priority? Okay, is the priority? Oh, we need to reform these people, or is the priority we need to arrest and by arrest I mean stop, pause, right? The harm that they are doing, right? Surely that is like the number one priority, and has to take priority over everything else. Like, regardless of what eventual justice system we end up with, if we have a person who is an who has just murdered somebody, we're probably going to try and incarcerate them in some form, right? We're probably going to try and restrict their movements, watch them to make sure that they cannot do that again. And that is a sad thing that we have to infringe on people's autonomy in that fashion, but we do, right? So number one priority, get them off the fucking platform so they stop doing harm. Then you can start thinking about like, well, how can we try and rehabilitate people from here?
I think that's what we were saying, though. We weren't saying you don't give them a temp ban. Like, yeah, you still get them off the platform, right?
Yeah, you still ban the individual account, and it's. I think what I was saying is like it's. It doesn't matter whether or not it's against the term of service for them to do a ban evasion, right? Like you've already disrupted their like all the benefits of having like this huge influence, and they have to start from the ground up. So you might as well as just, while they're going to do that anyway, still provide them like the remedial education. Like just give them, like as soon as you figure out that they've done a ban evasion, if it's not against your term of service, as the Facebook or Twitter, whatever, just start sending this account.
If you can mute that, Vivian, sorry, we're getting a lot of.
Oh, I'm really sorry. I got a new microphone and I forgot how sensitive it is.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead, Russian.
But that was no, that was the end of my point. Like if they're going to just do these ban evasions anyway, you as a company, Facebook or Twitter, just start providing these accounts that you're picking up or that are doing this. Like, you know, if they're Holocaust denial, give them like information on that's like factual. Like,
well, I don't think that's gonna help. Let's be honest. I mean,
you're saying like it won't help, but like there are people that are like, oh, I'm going to do my own research, that eventually just give in and be like, all right, well, I guess I'll just read this too. And then it just is the one thing that connects all the dots and it changes their worldview. Like it is a possibility. And what I'm saying is there are people that are so far into their ideologies, right, that you may seem that there's like no return whatsoever. And they may go to like perform an extremist action. And obviously there's no coming back from that. But even after that, there are people that reform, and you can try to prevent people from getting to that point along the way.
Well,
I suppose.
Which is why I'm saying, you know,
I just don't think.
let them become
Well, I guess I want to ask from Vivian's point of view, like, what is the benefit of a lifetime ban rather than a temporary ban?
Start putting in your song requests if you want to hear music after this. It's
that was the question.
exclamation SR space the link to the song that you want to hear.
Allowing them back on.
I'm going to be doing some news segs and some music after this. So, just so you know, I'm not going to stay on all night. I'm not staying on this panel all night.
They're going to start spreading the same stuff that they were spreading to begin with.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But all their followers have to come back to them. Like if the advertisers and stuff were like listed straight to a specific account, and that account got terminated, then the revenue was getting interrupted, and like those advertisers.
But this shit happens on Telegram like all the time, right? Like a Telegram channel will get removed, and then it will just be up. Like most of the time, they don't even bother changing the name; they just like put it up in the old name version 2, right, or something like that. And it doesn't really make a huge difference. You know, it takes like a couple of weeks for them to be back up where they were before. And you can't keep on top of like continuously banning these things either without like a significant dedicated team, right? Because as they're growing, they fly under the radars of sort of regular folks, right? Who are the people who would normally report this kind of stuff. So I just don't think that it's a particularly.
I guess what my answer to the prompt was is like, you can't enforce it, so just try to do as much like good as you can. I don't know. That's like I guess that's an easier like just simplification. Maybe I'm just being like too optimistic, too like utopian about it, you know. But I think you can enforce it, so just pursue other opportunities.
I think it's a fair point, but I feel like you can kind of enforce it. I mean, like, Trump hasn't gotten back on, you know, he's not creating like stock accounts like people like
he did. Actually, he did. He was trying to do that. Absolutely, he tried to do that.
There's also other countries.
That's hilarious.
They don't there's other countries where you don't have the same TOS anyway, and like that stuff because there's not like enough moderators fluent in the local like linguistics or whatever, right? They can't moderate this stuff. So if Facebook was going to do this, like there had to be like an expectation that they would be able to uphold this like pretty universally, and like it's not realistic that they're going to.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the only option is to keep pressuring as individuals, but we need to encourage people to be able to identify targets better. We need to communicate better on these things, and we need to pressure the media, in fact, as well, to report more effectively on extremism, because I feel like the vast majority of people just have no fucking understanding of how these things, how effective these sorts of things are, right? Like, fuck, I'm like losing my words at this point. Sorry, carry on.
No, I understand what you mean.
I got permanently banned off Twitter for wishing that Janine Shapiro would stub her toe on her bed in the morning. Literally, I got banned for life for that.
And you deserved it.
Yeah.
I know.
No,
right?
it makes sense. Checks out. Yeah.
I mean, that's dumb. But...
A+.
Now, but do you have a new Twitter?
I do.
Wow, ban evader.
Damn right.
Clip it and ship it. Send it to Twitter.
At Jack Dorsey. At Jack.
Send it to Jack Dorsey.
All right, to this conversation then, just because I kind of jumped in the middle of nowhere and I'm kind of lost as to where this is right now. So, do you think there's a specific limited amount of times, like, do you think there would be like a max limit where you would be like, okay, this person probably shouldn't be on the internet, like, or at least on the service used?
Yeah.
They could do something like what again, Blizzard, hate to have the name in my mouth, right? But like they have like this like intricate like scan your entire computer and like know the serial ID of all the parts and just ban you outright from there. Like they could do something like that, but I don't really want Facebook like as a term of service agreement scanning everything in my computer.
Yeah, they're looking for the MAC address. That's what they pull. They pull the MAC address.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There could be like limits onto that, and
because I feel like to an extent, like even though we can pretend that we can always know when some people are reformed or not, there's just something that you can't tell would happen unless they do it online. Like you're never going to see reformation when they're off the platform, and because you don't know if they've actually reformed because they're not on the platform. So kind of going on to this, like
so tough shit,
I think to some people there might be some need to get rid of them completely, or at least like get rid of the account. Like if they somehow just make another account or don't get the IP completely like rejected. If they're fine on that, that's perfectly fine. But I feel like if someone is, I'm hold on, I'm kind of losing it. Sorry. What were you saying, Vivian? Sorry.
I think for individuals that are like fairly well known, you know, you can generally tell that they're not reformed, right? Because like although these front-facing platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, are the they're the big fuckers, right? There's like plenty of smaller ones that people will move to and they get banned from the big ones, and usually they'll continue their behavior elsewhere, right? They just don't have as much discoverability, which is, you know, essentially what I want. You know, treat this shit like a fucking virus, right? Quarantine the fuckers. Make sure they come in contact with as few people as possible.
Put them on Parler, yeah.
I mean, basically, yeah.
So quarantining, you think is the better idea, is to concentrate them in one area where no one else can even counteract, no one can even have a chance of breaking into the echo chamber.
I mean, the point is more about like how much access they have to like random users, right? It's much more likely a man's gonna be turned into a QAnoner by some bullshit she saw on Facebook than some bullshit she saw on Gab or Telegram, right? Because she's probably not using those platforms.
Wow, Mike, you're really going in on the meme ones.
Kind of
at least you could get Dr. Feelgood with Vince Neil now. That shit would be hilarious.
Right? Like, Facebook's like that first port of call, and so you stop the radicalization of a whole bunch of people before it even begins by keeping that shit off of the most front-facing platforms.
Yeah, and I would believe that rehabilitation is probably something we should look into when it comes to online services as well. Like seeing some form of like change in a person, like if they are behaving different on a different platform, being able to see that with a social media that might have banned you, and then repealing a ban, seeing how you appropriately react on that one. Maybe we could expand on that, but it's very utopianistic to pretend like we can do all that in the present day. And even though I'd like some change in that, I do think that there are just people who should be completely removed off the platform, just because one, we don't have the technology for it, and two, there are just people who will always act like this online. So I don't know if rehabilitation is always going to be the best option, and I do think that there should be some form of termination completely for some accounts and individuals.
I think like letting these companies that like Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that set like rehabilitation goals is probably not in everyone's interest. I think it's probably better to have these platforms be open source, so that if you are, a MAGA guy or like, a QAnon person, like you can create your own Facebook for your purposes. And only if you're banned off of Facebook, you can go to the QAnon Facebook or whatever, right? And so then it's separate, because what?
Hey,
I don't think anyone's going to agree to
those
goals of rehabilitation.
They're just
I don't think
talking
those
about
companies should be setting
bans
them.
on social media as to whether
so
or not
you're
they're
saying
moral or
that
ethical.
instead of rehabilitating, they'll go to a different
yeah.
service that would be like that,
The
but even
stupid
worse?
ass Nazi wants to get on there and talk their Nazi shit and spread hatred towards others or white nationalists or whatever. Hell yeah, you should be able to ban them. If they're inciting violence, there should be lifetime bans.
Yeah, I don't think there's
There's plenty of reasons.
How does that work? Like rehabilitation, or like trying to trying to address the problem of radicalization, especially in the United States, has to be viewed as like a broad scale public health issue. Like, you can't just go, oh well, we can't take certain actions on Facebook because Facebook should be trying to rehabilitate
everybody or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not doing like mental checks or whatever.
That's what I'm saying though. Like, come on, man. If somebody's inciting violence on a social media platform, you're telling me that we shouldn't permanently ban them for that shit?
Yeah.
Like,
they should be permanently banned.
Give me a break. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
they should be permanently banned. But if like, okay, so if you're inciting violence, that's a crime, right? So like that person should be like investigated by the authorities. Seriously.
Okay,
right?
but like it depends on what we mean by inciting violence, because as we know in the United States, like inciting violence doesn't mean the same thing. Like if we just if I was just to go onto a platform and every day say that like I don't know, who have we got on the channel here that I can pick on? If I was gonna, I don't really know any of you guys all that well apart from Pastique. Okay, if I was to go on the platform every day, right, and say, hey, Pastique is a horrific child molester and all child molesters should be put to death, right? I just post that every single fucking day, right? At no point am I saying, hey, we need to go and kill him now, right?
Right.
That's the standard. That's the legal standard in the United States.
But
however, what I am doing is I am very obviously inciting some sort of stochastic terror, right?
That's a great point. No, that's a great point because, I mean, like Tucker Carlson, like on a nightly basis, basically calls for violence, right? So like, or like Lauren Southern. We all know Lauren Southern on this platform, right? You know, she's apparently being rehabilitated somehow. So like she basically she implicitly called for violence by saying that white people are being replaced in the West. So
she's gone on field trips for it too.
Yeah. So like people really, I don't know. Some people like apparently are trying to rehabilitate her, but she basically was calling for violence, with you inexplicitly. So that is a very gray area, I would say. I
mean, I don't think it is that much of a gray area morally. That's the problem, right?
Yeah, but but in the United States, that is kind of a gray area because the freedom of speech and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's precisely.
Wait, how is it not a gray? Wait, what do you mean, Vivi?
But I don't think morally it is a gray area, right? I think
morally, absolutely not. I totally agree.
I think we can very much see as like, I don't know, what would you call it? Like pre-consequentialist or something, where you're like, you can see that like somebody's actions or somebody's words could reasonably result.
Guys, don't forget to get your song requests in, otherwise we're going to be listening to nothing but Mike Lightyear's music, which is pretty damn awesome. He comes in with the real shit, but don't be afraid to post what you want to hear.
See when somebody is demonizing a particular
exclamation point SR
and putting that
space and the link of the song title.
Go past that.
Link to
I mean, like we are talking about like the First Amendment, about free speech and these kind of things. But what the First Amendment means is like you have the right. You cannot be in jail for what you're saying, but it does not mean that you have the right to be platformed for those kind of things. So it's okay to ban him if he say bullshit. We don't have to give him like a stage for him to say like racist shit or anything like that. So. On top of that, he should have already been in jail for the coup he tried to stage. Like, basically, there should not be democracy for the enemy of democracy. That was like the old leftist motto about those kind of things. Like, and I think it applies to Trump more than anybody else right now in the US. And I rest my case.
Lock him up.
Drop the mic.
Lock him up.
Based.
Yeah, where'd you get a Texas hoodie at? Where'd you get this Texas hoodie?
Oh, because I lived in Texas, and it was $5 in Walmart. So.
Okay. Okay.
That's
great.
They didn't check his passport, make sure he was a real American first.
Oh, yeah. You didn't get deported?
No, they asked me the questions. They asked me if I was a commie when I entered, or other authoritarian regime. And because of the authoritarian regime, I felt compelled to answer no. Because, in my opinion, the way I see communism, it's not authoritarian at all. So, fuck that. Fuck that question.
I mean... Some communism is definitely.
Okay, so but like,
yeah, not all of
back
them.
to the open source thing, right? So, you know, a lot of these companies, a lot of these social media companies are kind of monopolies, right? So like Facebook, you know, is kind of a monopoly in its own way because they own also Instagram as well. So if they were open source, then you know, disregarding the people that are basically calling for violence and those kind of corner cases of very you know, dangerous kind of speech, which, you know, even in under the First Amendment is still kind of outside of the bounds. Then you could go there, right, and spread your information about whatever. Like, do you not think that would be like the best way to deal with it? And then Facebook, of course, could ban these people like without, you know, if they just don't like the way they sound. At least then they have a place to go to, you know, be still under their right to speak. You know what I mean?
How are we gonna make Facebook open source?
That requires bold action from the federal government.
Open source,
it's been done before, by the way.
No, open source just means
they make Facebook open.
Access to the code so that you can create the same website. I mean, people can create social media websites.
I'm not sure. But I believe Twitter has kind of taken steps towards this, where they're making their code open source. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
No, but I can look into it.
Yeah, I think Twitter is like trying to make like an open source platform of some kind.
There are some tech companies that are making parts of their code open to the public, and other companies to use them. Advance things.
It says on the dev page. Hold on, I found it. Twitter has been built on open source since the beginning. That's what it says.
I don't see how this helps. Like, anybody can make a website, a social media site that is somewhat like the social media sites that already exist. We've seen it, right? Gab, Parler, whatever, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to be as successful, because what makes Twitter and Facebook that successful is the fact that they already have that massive user base. If you want to reach people, that's where you have to go. You don't really have much of a choice.
Yes, but I mean, if it became, you know, if Trump say like, maybe it's been tried before, right? Because didn't Trump put his name behind a lot of these other companies, right? Like Parler and stuff like that, and Gab,
yeah,
maybe.
Did. And you got a significant amount of people moving from.
I never used those sites.
Moving to Gab, moving to Telegram, right? But like, when you compare the amount of users on those websites to the amount of users on Facebook and Twitter, it's not even fucking close, dude. Mm-hmm. Like. The people with the most followers on Telegram are, I mean, they probably just about scratch 1 million, right? Like, big users on Telegram are like 300,000 or so, which, don't get me wrong, like, they're big, it's big numbers, but it's nothing compared to Twitter, right? You've got people with like 100 million fucking followers on those things.
Mm-hmm.
And these social media platforms that aren't even like direct competitors to these like giants, right? Like Snapchat and Instagram weren't always part of Facebook. They just got absorbed because Facebook is so big. So even if you have like these smaller companies that pop up, I mean, they're just gonna get eaten unless you have these, like, again, utopian, right? Like ideas that there's gonna be huge protections for like these startup social media platforms.
Yeah. So what can we do? Like I said earlier, right? We need to better educate people on like the harms of essentially stochastic violence, right? And advocating for violence on platforms without necessarily explicitly doing so. We need to be able to report on that, right? So we need to encourage the media, which means getting more people who are experts in the field into media, rather than just the blatant fucking nepotism that goes on with this subject, where you have some fucking dude who's like a son or a brother or a nephew or a friend or whatever. They get the position of doing the extremist reporting because they're already in that media sphere, when they don't have anywhere near the expertise that some other people do. I think the only person I respect in the mainstream media in the United States on the subject is probably CNN's Donny O'Sullivan. Like, he's pretty decent, but like everybody else is fucking nonsense. We had a dude, the editor of I think it's ITV News, I forget, one of our big news channels over here, right, referred to, we had a shooting in the in the United Kingdom recently referred to the shooter as being affiliated with the online terrorist group Incel, right? Like, and this guy's like the editor of a major news network. So that's the kind of caliber we're talking about when we're talking about mainstream reporting on these issues. Fucking garbage. Okay, so better education, and then we need to encourage people to use the people power that they have, the pressure that they can put on advertisers and companies in a responsible manner. We can see it's incredibly effective when it, you know, when something takes off, some woman in a park like calls the police on some black dude for basically no reason. Her life gets absolutely fucking destroyed and she's murdered off the platform, right? And don't get me wrong, fuck that bitch. But at the same time, there are much bigger and much better and much more dangerous targets that are not being attacked in the same way because the education just isn't there for people to recognize who those people are.
Yeah, and the type of education you're describing is there's a collection of essays. Jason, again, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, bringing it up. There's a collection of essays called Reinventing Pedagogy of the Oppressed, where they talk specifically about the technology sector in America with Facebook and like how social media has been so ingrained in our society. Like the form of pedagogy that would help people better understand these kinds of things and how they impact their life is called conscientiousness. And there is like proposals for like bringing those forth. So that's a solution that's not like unrealistic. That's something that you can implement. And I think it's totally doable, even in the American education system.
I mean, wouldn't people call that like critical race theory? And that's like a huge like political like hot topic right now.
Critical race theory and conscientiousness are they can be connected, right? If you teach conscientiousness and like let's say Detroit, where you're teaching people like students to understand their state's history by connecting with their communities and understand their local community's history. Obviously, you have to talk about race. If you do that in anywhere in the United States, you're gonna have to talk about race. But critical race theory specifically is like a form of, it's like a psychology or like an understanding of law in the United States and how race has played a part into it. So like critical race theory isn't like actually something that's like present in that would totally be present in that system, like because the way that people the way that it exists now is like not how it not something that you would have to implement in like K through 12. And maybe the way that people are afraid of it, where it's like you're teaching about America being racist, like yeah, that's obviously going to happen. But it's specifically with like the tech industry, like you would have to talk about how systematic racism impacts like AI development and like social media's like algorithms and how it would affect like minority community.
Sounds like critical race theory, boy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take all my parents down to school. I'm
gonna be on this. That sounds like some CRT, brother.
Well, I guess either way, I would be in favor.
That's not a fucking problem. That's not a fucking problem. It's a problem in the way that like conservatives called fucking everything communism during the McCarthyist era, and teachers were getting fucking like losing their jobs over teaching communism when they didn't even have the first idea what communism was because the subject was so heavily censored in the country, right? Conservatives call everything now wokeism or critical race theory. Like if you even mention that a black person exists, it's all the critical race woke SJW cultural Marxist Bolshevism. Like these people are fucking unhinged, and we can't like change our education system or like stop teaching kids stuff because like a bunch of flat earthers have decided to invade this fucking PTA meetings.
Yeah, no, politics is a team sport, and they love, and you know how Eagles fans are with team sports, okay? Like, I mean, it's not a pretty sight. I mean, an Eagles protest is equivalent to January 6th.
They definitely have team sport also in the UK, so I'm pretty sure she has a good idea of what it means.
I missed that. What did you say?
I said that they definitely have team sports in the UK, so you must have a point about. You must have at least a glimpse of what it means to force our supporters behave.
Football's fucking disgusting.
Who's your football club, Vivian?
I hate football.
Are Republicans Eagles fans? Wait, hold on.
I don't know. I'm a Chargers fan.
I just made a new political ideology. I'm out.
I'm used to disappointment.
I just look. I have no problem with the game. Like it's a fucking game, isn't it? There's the culture that springs up around football and the absolute ridiculous. Did nobody see any of the stuff that happened around the Euro 2021?
Shit. One of the black
3 minutes till we go to music and combo.
So
Make sure hop in the Discord.
The English players.
If you want to get in on shit, go into the blazing room, and I will pull you in as soon as we move over.
Literal fucking riots, basically. Like,
let's go,
football fans.
But the racism really came from the English fans, from what I understand.
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
Yeah, because
no, not only. Like there are some countries that are known for having more racist supporters than others, like especially in the Eastern European countries.
Poland.
Serbia, Croatia.
But the point is, like, I don't know, this sort of bullshit culture that springs up around sports, like, it's just fucking stupid, honestly. There's ridiculous factionalism that results in people beating each other up over like whose team's better. Like, it's so stupid. It's like playground level bullshit. Like, my dad's better than your dad. No, he's not. Fucking throw a punch at the other kid. Like, it's really stupid, and it happens in America with American football as well. Like.
Yeah, but like in Europe, we have like those local nationalist groups that will come with buses and start fights before the game. I remember that between Lyon and Marseille, that they were doing those kind of things. Same in Paris. So a part of the supporters will give the other supporters like some kind of appointment near the train station or whatever, and they will start to beat the shit out of each other's before the game for no reasons. And that's kind of common in some places.
Sorry, I thought you were finished. That's the other big problem, though. Just to elaborate on what you were saying, is like, at least in the United Kingdom and probably in other countries in Europe, like the football firms, right? Like little gangs that basically spring up around football teams, and I just, it's very much ingrained into our history. The whole like football and violence stuff, and it's gonna take a long while to get rid of it.
Yeah, or like the old firm in Scotland between the two teams of Glasgow, the Rangers and the Celtics. You know, like one team who were, I think it was the poor Protestants, and the other like the rich Catholics, or the opposite. And basically they had fights for
Celtic
hundreds of years.
Celtic and Rangers. Yeah, they're continuously fighting to this day. There is some good that can come from it, though. In Liverpool, there was a stadium collapse, there was a stadium collapse. I think there was a fire. I'm really hazy on the details because it's been a long time since I read anything about it.
Really bad.
But it was bad. People died, right?
Yeah.
And The Sun, which is one of our right-wing tabloid papers here in the United Kingdom, did a whole bunch of really fucked up reports, right? They said that everything was like caused by the fans, that there were like fans trying to stop the police from helping people, that they were like urinating on cops or some shit. Like, they made a whole bunch of claims about what had happened here, and it was proven to be false, right? The police actually stopped some of the fans from leaving because they thought like a riot was breaking out or something, as people were trying to escape where the stadium was collapsing. And so they basically blocked people in so that they ended up dying. And to this day, the Sun newspaper, there's pretty much a citywide boycott on buying the Sun newspaper. And I think that happened back in like the 70s or 80s or something. Like, it was a long ass time ago. So, like, you know, sometimes this sort of factional pride or whatever can be used for good purposes as well. But...
yeah, there are some examples of teams like the best example generally is the one from St. Pauli in Germany, where the team has like anarcho-communist types and anti-fascist, pro-LGBT cop, and there are some other stories that are actually really interesting. I mean, we're derailing a little, but like...
I wanted to
Anti-fascist for LGBT cop. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. What?
No, not cop, police, cop, KOP. You know, like group of supporters.
Okay. Yeah.
Like sorry, I forgot cop has another meaning in English.
But I
think cops does not matters.
OnlyFacts had the facts for us in the chat, by the way. It was like 900 dead, the Hillsborough disaster. 97 deaths, 700 plus injuries. Why did I say 900 dead? Fucking hell.
Hey y'all, I'm hopping off. Thank you very much, Prime. As always, you're an all-star. Absolutely appreciate you. Vivian, your point of view is always appreciated. Fresh Ink, I'm reading that book. So I will talk to you guys very shortly. I hope you guys have a good night.